It's great to welcome back to the program today Dr. John Kruse, neuroscientist, psychiatrist, author, who has been working with adults with ADHD for over 30 years. It's so great to have you on. The aftermath of this presidential debate earlier this week has been very interesting. From a political perspective, the consensus has been Donald Trump had a bad debate night. And of course, this can happen without any sort of interesting analysis with regard to behaviors, conditions, disorders, etc. I'm curious your general sense based on the conversations we've previously had. Did you believe Trump struggled Tuesday night because of anything other than Kamala Harris simply being more prepared and kind of pushing his buttons?
I think Donald Trump struggles all the time with being coherent, with remembering what he said, with remembering that he shouldn't just be riffing off on everything that's at the top of his mind. So I think there's pre-existing conditions he has that make it a challenge for anyone to be debating with him or talking with him, but that make him vulnerable to looking unhinged, temperamentally unstable, inconsistent in his answers. So I'm not sure if that's exactly what you were asking.
Yeah, no, to some degree. I mean, let's talk about some of the specific things that were observed. There were times where Trump would kind of struggle to stay on topic. He would ramble and then he'd realize I actually have some more time to fill here. So then he would wildly change topic to immigration or the country being destroyed. Is that is there, you've talked about ADHD before with regard to Trump. Is that anything related to ADHD in your mind?
Yes, I think those are central elements of ADHD, that being readily distracted, having trouble staying on track with the topic, being pulled in by distractions in your own mind or things you see on the stage, or, it's probably good that there wasn't a live audience because Trump would be responding to specific faces, gestures, sounds he was hearing there. So these have been ongoing, pervasive, excessive for his age characteristics of his behavior that we've seen. And one of the things we talked a lot about 3 months ago or 2 months ago when we talked before is his use of stimulant medications to control and limit some of these ADHD behaviors. And that was apparent again within the first minute of his presentation at the
Okay,
recent debate.
let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. As a layperson, one of the things I noticed within, I don't know that it was the first minute because I was kind of getting myself settled with my laptop and different things. Certainly within the first 5 or 10 minutes, I noticed that while Kamala Harris was speaking, Trump's eyes would sometimes go from almost seemingly kind of shut, especially the right eye, to wide open, and then they would be going side to side in a very noticeable way. And people that I was seeing on Twitter, et cetera, were commenting about what is he looking at? What is going on there? Is that related to what you're talking about regarding stimulants?
With the stimulants, I'm talking more specifically about pupillary dilation, which we don't have any voluntary control over. I mean, where he's looking, where he's directing his gaze, some of that's probably involuntary, some of it's conscious choice. But his pupils, he can't say, I want my pupils to be bigger right now. And his pupils were huge in contrast to his behavior in what was striking to me is he stood there still in front of his lectern and in every other speech, not just the rallies where there's different energy and excitement, but in interviews and press conferences. Every time you see Trump, he's moving his head, he's twitching his body, he's pursing his lips. And to actually see him, and again, if you're not looking for it, you might not have noticed it, but it
Mm.
was striking. He was standing like a normal adult, which he isn't able to do when he's not medicated. And again, it's the triad of pupils dilated, movements being less than a third of what they are at his baseline, and the coherence of his speech. So lots of people noticed, the times when he wasn't coherent. And by coherent, I don't mean truthful. I don't mean logical. I mean, does this sentence have any connection with what was before it? And although he's still way below a normal adult for his age on medication, When he's not on medication, he's much more incoherent. He's much more jumping from topic to topic, throwing in a sentence that has no connection to the previous ones. So that being scattered, that being unable to track himself, that being distractible are all hallmarks of ADHD, as is the hyperactivity.
Yeah, you commented about Donald Trump's hand gestures in our last interview. What was your assessment of that with regard to Tuesday's debate?
So in the first half hour of the debate, I was actually counting again, and it wasn't just I'm counting any movement that's more than about 4 inches. And he was making less than 10 movements a minute, which may or may not sound large, but at his baseline, he's usually moving 40, 50 movements a minute. So
Hmm.
he did get looser as the session went on. And I think some of it is either conscious, attempting to control, but also we know stimulant medications do decrease hyperactivity in those with ADHD. And might seem a tangent, but I think Donald Trump actually owes his life to his ADHD. That might sound outrageous, but with the recent assassination attempt 2 months back, his head is always constantly and his body. He
Mm,
was a moving target. He gives credit to the chart that he looked at for that 1 second when
right.
the bullet came. But if you look at his head, any minute of that rally presentation, there's no 10-second interval where he's still. So he was a moving target for the shooter to begin with, and he was in motion when the bullet came. So I think it would be nice of him if he finally acknowledged his ADHD, because it saved his life 2 months ago.
One of the storylines has been that all of the debate prep that Trump did went out the window. And, part of the prep involved not taking the bait from Kamala Harris on things like crowd size and his rallies and whatever the case may be. And he seemed almost constitutionally unable. It very much agitated him. Every time she would get one of these lines in, he would start kind of talking more loudly. You started to see the sweat from his upper lip, etc. Does that seeming sort of throwing out the window of all of the prep that he did tell you anything relevant?
Yeah, there's two angles there I'd like to comment on. One is that he did acknowledge more prep work this time than he has for other debates, but
Yeah.
one of the characteristics that's one of the defining symptoms of ADHD is not being willing to engage in tasks that take sustained effort. So doing your homework is something people with ADHD, if they're bright enough, get by in school, but where's your homework? Oh, I didn't do it. He's never prepped for other debates because he knows it already. People attribute that just to being narcissistic, but a real narcissist wants to look good. They know they need to have the facts on hand. So again, how much prep he actually did or didn't. And then the other part of it is how well can he follow it? And again, people think this is all an aspect just of narcissism, that he knows best, so he's not going to listen to anyone. But I think he's not that stupid that he knows that, blurting things out, going ballistic about eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio, probably doesn't help him except with his base. But as you said, he is constitutionally unable to stay on track, to follow advice, to follow particularly a sequence of commands. If you have just one thing he has to keep in mind, maybe he can do that. But people with ADHD are particularly challenged by keeping a sequence of tasks in order. And one other aspect with ADHD, we often focus on the cognitive dimension, the attention, the tracking things. But an intrinsic part of ADHD, particularly the hyperactive form of ADHD, which he displays, is emotional regulation or lack of emotional regulation. So for people with ADHD, emotions do tend to come up more strongly, more forcefully, and they have less ability to channel, redirect, control them. And we've been seeing this. I mean, one of my favorite parts of the debate back with Hillary 8 years ago was when Hillary questioned his temperament. And he went ballistic. So I have the best temperament of anyone. I have a wonderful temperament. I mean, there was no self-awareness and no ability to control his emotional reaction.
In past debates, Trump often is extremely sniffly. Now, I don't mean that he has congestion necessarily, but I mean that often in between sentence parts, he'll breathe in like that and you hear it, and then he will sort of continue. It's almost integrated into his speech patterns. This debate, I didn't notice that. He was angry. He exhibited other sort of behaviors, but he was not doing that sniffing. Anything about that we should think about?
I mean, there's been lots of chatter, and Howard Dean way back 8 years ago got sort of dinged for commenting that maybe Trump is snorting cocaine, and there's been talk about whether Trump snorts Adderall. Now, when I talk about Trump being on stimulants at certain points that we can be clear of, I'm clear that I don't know what specific stimulant. It's a powerful one, clearly, and I don't know how he's taking it, whether he's swallowing it as he should or sniffing on it. And in fact, I sort of gave an offhand comment in one of my writings that rather than riffing on his sniffing, we should actually be supporting his snorting, because the message is that taking the stimulant medications makes Donald Trump a more functional, organized, less impulsive, more responsible, normal-like human being. And he knows that. That's why before important debates, that's why before important State of the Union speeches, he takes a stimulant. But again, other people commented to me. I mean, first I got lots of texts, look at his pupils, because people remembered that, they knew he was, and several other people noticed, as you did, that he wasn't sniffing as much. Does that mean he's changed the mode of how he takes his medication? It's possible, but I'd put that in the level of conjecture. I just simply don't know.
When it comes to Kamala Harris, the contrast sometimes will make it harder to focus on the specific, in the sense of, for example, in the June 27th debate, so much attention was on Joe Biden's struggles in that debate that the fact that Trump's performance was a disaster didn't really get that much attention by comparison. And similarly, in Tuesday's debate, compared to Trump, Kamala Harris seemed so focused, not a glimmer of sweat, sometimes smirking calmly, sometimes laughing, etc. If we focus in just on Harris, what did you see?
I mean, I saw, again, in contrast to someone with ADHD, I saw someone who appeared like a normal adult who could figure out ahead of time the general things that she wanted to say, who could execute them in live time, who could respond with genuine emotions to what the other person was saying or not saying. And I agree with you about the contrast between the two, because lots of people said, oh, this was Trump's worst debate. As defenders were saying that, this was an one-off. But if you look back at how he performed during the debate with Biden, and about the only attention that was directed to him was the fact checkers, who said almost 90% of his statements were verifiably false. He was still off track. It was just compared to Biden, you didn't notice his incoherence as much. So I don't think if you just objectively pulled out Trump's portion of the debate 2 months ago and this recent debate with Harris, that there's actually that much difference in terms of whether he stayed on track or whether, yes, she needled him and she directed him off track numerous times skillfully. But his overall coherence, does one sentence really follow another, I don't think was particularly higher in his debate with Biden.
I want to bring up the topic of, as you talk about appropriateness of reactions in context. Knowing many people who work in the field of mental health, psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, etc., I know that this is generally a topic, which is, does one's emotional reaction or behavior in general seem appropriate for the circumstances? And one of the things I did notice was that when Harris would lay the bait down, so to speak, sometimes Trump would shake his head. Sometimes he would smile, but it was sort of like a pained smile, and it made you wonder kind of what was going through his mind. Was he thinking about how he would respond, et cetera? Can you talk a little bit about the appropriateness of Trump's apparent reactions to the things that Kamala Harris would say?
I can try to address it from the sort of the bigger topic of trying to sort out what someone else is thinking or feeling, and that we seldom know exactly what they're responding to. So, for example, when, the example of, do world leaders think highly of Trump or not highly of Trump? I mean, clearly from the evidence I've heard, most of them see his ADD symptoms and his narcissism and his not being able to stay on track and view him as weak and incoherent and maybe scary because of that. But I don't know how many of them have shared any of that directly with him. I don't know if he's so devoid of insight and surrounded by yes men that nobody gives him that message, and he really is completely oblivious to it, which with severe ADHD, you could genuinely be oblivious, or whether it's his narcissism that it's so important to him that I have to be the strongest, most important person, that he can't even entertain the thought that he could be less than perfect. So part of what's hard is you can see a reaction. We can fairly objectively know what even emotion might come. I mean, a facial expression of surprise is different than anger. But when someone gets angry, that's usually because they perceive something to be unfair and they can't do anything about it. We don't know what about it that made it anger. Is he angry because he's being exposed as a fraud? Is it anger because he knows Kamala just scored a debate point? Is it anger because... So getting at what's really deep inside of him, I'd say we're on speculative ground, and we should be clear that we're speculating when we're doing that.
We've been speaking with Dr. John Kruse, neuroscientist, psychiatrist, and author. Always appreciate your insights and your time.
Thanks. I've enjoyed talking with you today.